hello and welcome. Web components for the Java devs. Web components is something people are coming from the UI or graphical interface. Very more or less heard about this stuff. But if you're a server-side developer, then maybe this is something new. So what is a web component? What we want to do with this one? So let's assume that you are server-side developer, Java one, and you just love your REST interface and your command line interface and all this stuff, and that's just nice. And then there is this thing that someone requested, an administrative web UI. Oh my God, and now how to create web UI. And then you will search in the internet and you will see, oh, there are so many different standards, but there's one thing coming up during the last few years, and this was a standard called Web Components. And surprise, surprise, you can't imagine, it is in a way that nearly every browser during the last few versions started supporting Web Components. So, and I mean, really mean nearly every browser, and this was just something nice. So you can see Web Components nice, it's a standard, and if you need a button, you can just grab it, and if you need a tab, you can just grab it. But then you're looking at the stuff that is written in, and it is HTML5, CSS, and JavaScript. Okay, so some people like it, some people like it even more, but how to map this one to the world you are familiar with and you like, for example, the Java world. What we need is more or less some kind of communication, because web components are pure client-side stuff, and we want to see what we can do to make a Java representative out of it, and this means you're switching from the client side to server-side state. And for this, we need some kind of communication between the client side and the server side, and then you need some Java class that is presenting this stuff. For example, if you want to have a new button, then you're just writing new button, and on the front end, you would see a button to click. And in an ideal world, you would have some kind of test component for it as well, because if you are in the Java world, maybe you want to write JUnit5 tests against your web app, and then what you need is something that you can trigger and consume in your JUnit5 universe. And so there must be something, but to test a web app, you need something like Selenium or Selenoid, and then you have this communication life cycle stuff. So there are a few things, but in the end, what we can do, we can think about as a Java developer that the communication could be on the Java side, Java component, for sure it's Java or Kotlin, and then this test component. So this would be an ideal world, and how to go to this one. Because for your colleagues, what you want to do is you want to bundle this Java component with this corresponding test component that's dealing with Selenium, and just release it like a plain Java dependency. So this would be just nice. So what you're doing, so if you start searching in the field for open source tools that are dealing with this, or how to do it by yourself, the first thing I would recommend, don't do it by yourself, because this is on this stage, if you have this full stack implementing by yourself, this is just a huge stack, but there are some open source frameworks available that are helping a lot here. So I wanted to show how to map, for example, SAP UI5 web components. Why I want this? No, I'm not thinking that they are the latest and greatest web components, but they are web components. They are some kind of industrial standard for some environments. So if you have to deal in SAP universe somehow, or you have customers that have this UI5 style already, it would be nice if you could just integrate. And on the other side, the nice thing is there is no server-side implementation for it. So it's really just a web component. And my first target was just how to make them server-side. Server-side has some benefits. For example, if you have this state on the server side and you have something like a disabled button and a request from a compromised client is coming in for a click button on the server side, you can just decide, I'm not dealing with this one because it is just not enabled. So you can deal some kind of in the field of security, you have some possibilities. If you have some trade-offs on the server side as well, for sure, so session size and all this stuff, but in the end, if you want to go on the server side and if you want to work in Java, this would be one approach. So if you want to check out this web components, they are open source. This is why I choose this one, and you will find it on asap.github.io. It's actively maintained, so just have a look there, and there's a good documentation as well. So what are the attributes and some examples and all this stuff. So what we want to do now is we want to start mapping a web component and going to the server side. So if you're not familiar with web components and you're dealing with this stuff the first time, and especially if you're a Java developer, so for me it was exactly the same. So I'm working with Java since 1996, and I just stuck on this language, and I still like it. So it's nothing bad, but then there was this UI stuff, and my first experience with web component or with web, it was a long time ago, structs and all this stuff. And whatever you're looking at, it's mostly some kind of mapping. So you have this HTML template, and then you start mapping an object tree on the server side, and then you have some magic going backwards and forwards. But in the end, if you're looking at this web components, you have to deal with this technology called npm, for example, because if you want to have this web components, you have a command like npm install and then the address of this web component. So with this, you can compare it with a dependency Maven. So you just say, okay, Maven, please fetch this dependency. But what will happen is you're going to this official repository, you're grabbing exactly this web components, and it will be stored in some local repository. And this local repository is more or less the same like this m.2 folder in Maven. So it will be stored there. You can have it per project. You can have it for the whole user in your user local home folder. So this is all fine. And the next thing, if you want to actually use it after you declare this dependency, is that you have to write somewhere an import statement. So you need to say, okay, at this web page, I need the functionality of this web component. And like an import statement in your Java class, you have something like an import and then the full qualified address. Here it's at ur5/webcomponent/this and badge. So to get a badge. So this address could be slightly different. It really depends on the guy who creating this web component. But in the end, what you have, you're grabbing these dependencies, you have them locally, and then you're just activating them on a page inside the namespace, like an import statement. And then you have this web component itself, and this is wrapped in a tag. And this is like the class name in Java that we're using with new somewhere, and then using it with attributes, getting, setting, whatever stuff, is here inside your website, more or less with this tag ur5-badge. So this is a web world, but we want to have it in Java. So what can I do to have this one in Java? I see that I have this mapping stuff somewhere, but how to map, or is there anything that you can use to map already? So if you're looking, for example, at this badge, what you have is that these web components, they are not flat. Web components can be cascaded or can be built in a tree, a hierarchy of web components. If you're looking at this documentation, for example, for this ur5, and here it's just an example from this badge, what you see is that you can customize it. And this web component can have attributes, can have properties, and one thing is it could have complex attributes as well. So it's like a Java class, more or less. So you have getters and setters somehow, and then you have the possibility to add something, because you have something like a list or something like a bag, where you can store stuff in. So you can do all this one. So there must be a possibility to not only create this instance, there must be a possibility to change attributes and properties, and then to cascade and also to connect and to disconnect complex attributes. So this is part of the web components. And in the end, it's very familiar to the Java world. So we are doing the same with classes. We are not calling them web components, we're calling them classes. We have attributes, we have methods, we have this complex child in terms of data structures where we are holding some stuff. So the next thing would be how to map it. So, and the great thing here is you can just hook in on an existing open source framework. So there is this framework called Vardin. Yes, it's still existing. It's an older one, but since version 10, we have web components in the front end. Vardin itself is delivering some web components, but it's completely open source. And if you're digging inside this implementation, you will see that Vardin itself had the challenge to write some maintainable generic way to handle communication, setting and getting properties and mapping this one to Java classes. And this is in the package Vardin Flow. Vardin Flow is the Java side of this Vardin platform. So the good thing here is that the abstraction layer inside Vardin is so clear that you not even need to know that there are Vardin components. You not even need to use basic Vardin graphical components. So there is really no look and feel if you don't want. So you really can start from scratch in this API layer and can start mapping your own web components, whatever it is. The main thing is it must be a web component. So it must fulfill the standard. And with this, we can now start mapping SIP UI5 web components. So the first thing is we have to say the system somehow that I want to have an npm install to grab these dependencies, to have them available and to store them inside your repository. And this is done with an annotation in Vardin, and it's called npm package. And then the value and the version is exactly what you need before. So this npm install is grabbing the latest, but you can add version to this one, to the statement, to declare explicit what is the version you want to have. In this annotation, you have to do it immediately. So the value is the address of this component, the coordinates, and the version is then the version you find on the homepage or you decide to grab. The next thing would be you need to have the possibility to make this stuff available. So a corresponding import statement. This one is an annotation as well in Vardin Flow. It's a JS module, and then you're just addressing the JavaScript file internally. So this is a little bit, it's not so convenient because you have to find out what is the right JS file here in UI5. It's just clear, the import statement and the JavaScript file is just the same. So it's really add UI5, web components, ds-badge, and so on, .js. In some other web component systems, it could be a little bit slightly different in terms of naming schema also. So there is no fixed naming schema that every component must fulfill. So this add UI5, for example, some other components don't have this add in the front. So don't be irritated by this one. So with this annotation, I have done exactly the same like an import statement. So now it's available. So it's not only in the repository, it's now available. So I can start using it. And then I have to map this tag from the client side to something on my Java side. And this is just done with the annotation add tag and then the same name. That's it. So with this in mind, I'm now able to map every step. So I learned what's going on the client side. So I'm now doing the same stuff on the Java side. So what's the right place and how to work with this one. The good thing is that you just need a class. Here it's a generic class from the Vardin Flow framework called component. And this component, the good thing here is that this component has no graphical impact. So it's not a default style that's bringing in or a default color schema or whatever. It's just a plain core component without any stuff around. And if you're extending this class, you can just use exactly these three annotations. And then you have done the semantic equal stuff compared to npm install, import, making it available, and mapping the tag. So that's it. Now we have a Java class and how to use it and what are the pros and cons here. So if if I'm dealing with this one, the next thing would be how to deal with attributes. If you're dealing with attributes, for example, or properties, it's more or less the same. Here, for example, this is a column scheme with a value. I want to have a mapping to an attribute so that I have a getter and a setter. And the way Flow is mapping this one is that you have with this extend component a method called getElement. And this getElement is Java representing plain state or plain entity of a web component. And then you have this generic method, set property, get property, and so on. And then you're just using the name and the value to address this one. So this is a little bit, it's not so nice. And if you're looking here at this one, you have some naming schema things. So like color minus scheme will be color with S and then scheme. So written it together, and the minus will be mapped to, and so on. So you have some of this naming transformations. It would be good if you make constants out of it to make refactoring safe, but in the end, what you're doing, you're naming the attribute and setting the value here. And with this, I'm now able to set values. These are just plain attributes, these are not complex attributes, but we're coming to this part anyway. So now I'm able to create this one and setting properties and attributes of this batch component already. And the next thing, how to get it out, it's exactly the same. You're saying get element, get property, and then you're getting out this value as a string. The only thing what you have to do here is you have to think about typing. For example, it would be nice if you have some generics there so that you could type it, but this stuff must be done by yourself. So anyway, everything on the client side is more or less text. And then if you're grabbing a property, you need the information what kind of property it is. So this is just the easiest implementation you could do, just convert it to string and push it to the client and grabbing it back. But if you're a little bit working on the API on your side, you can make sure that there is type safety in terms of it's an int, it's a string, it's a boolean, whatever. So this one. And the next thing is how to deal with complex attributes. So complex attributes are, for example, icons, or if you have a tree, then a node in this tree, or if you have a table, a picture in a cell of a table. So these are all complex attributes because the attribute itself is a web component. But if this is a web component, the basic thing is already solved. So here, what you could do is you could just create a class UI5 icon, extending from component, adding the 3 annotations, for example, npm package, JS module, and tag, and then you have this component. How to map them together or how to merge them together is just get element, append child, not setting a property, it's just appending a child, and then you're grabbing the element out of this component you have. So you're always going back to this get element. Why they've done it in their API, I don't know. But if you know that you always have this Java class and with get element, you're grabbing the native one out of it, then you can just start connecting them. So with this, we are now able to setting attributes and properties, and we're adding complex childs. And this just for free. So it's just a few lines of code, and then you can deal with it in a quite efficient and complex way. So what it looks like for a developer, it's amazingly easy. So you have now this class, you can just instantiate. So you say new UI5 badge or new button or new whatever. And then you start setting and adding attributes, set tags, set color scheme. You can make it more safe or convenient if you're not dealing with strings, or enumerations out of it, and so on. And that's it. And if you're doing exactly this one, you can just see it on screen. We have this nice badge. That's it. So what's going on here? So you're creating this instance, and this instance is connecting to this communication service. And this communications layer is just converting this stuff and dealing with long polling, with routers and all this stuff for you. This is a very convenient thing, so you don't have to think about this one. And it will hold this communication, and the state of this Java class is more or less the leading one compared to the client one. The Vaadin flow gives you something like a push mechanism. So even if you are changing a class and you're activating push, it will push the data to the client and will update the client. And if the client is updated, it will send the values to you. So this as well. So you have this bidirectional communication anyway with this framework. And now you can start building notifications and action click listener and so on. So a click listener of a button is exactly like you learned it from Swing or from JavaFX. You really have this action that will be invoked. Inside this action, you can just work like a regular Java thing, and then the result will be shifted back to the class. Okay. The same with states. If you have, for example, a switch on, switch back, it's exactly what's going on here. There's communication in 2 layers, and just give it a try with a few lines of code. This is not so difficult. What I highly recommend is that you start creating constants, but this is just pure software technology or software technique. So just make refactoring safe. Work a bit on this typing so that you have your typing a little bit more formulated, not only the strings. So this would be just boring. So from this point of view, you have an object-oriented graph that could match very well to your graphical user interface. This is one thing. There is, for everybody who loves Kotlin, there is DSL already that is taking the advantage of this type-safe builders from Kotlin, and it's wrapping so far here at this point the Vaadin components, but on the other side he has a generic layer as well, so you can just use this Caribou DSL exactly for your own components as well. And just as an appetizer, how it looks like, you could write now your UI like I have this button. Inside this button, I'm defining click listener, a left listener, a right listener, whatever, and then I'm instantiating stuff or saving, doing whatever. So there is quite a good documentation. It's, I think, finally supported by Vaadin. So it was created outside of Vaadin privately, but I think they started supporting it. So you have this Kotlin support now, and URL is Vaadin on kotlin.eu. And it's maintained by a Vaadin guy by itself in its free time. So this is one thing. If you want to have a look at this one and just try it out, I have this Vaadin-developer on GitHub, and there you will find this SAP -UR5 -4 -flow. This name is just long, but you can hopefully remember it as SAP UR5 for flow. And then you see what I've done already, some examples, and how to work on this one. And you can just grab it. And if you like it, I would appreciate if you give me some merge requests, or if you just update the version or whatever. So it's just for free, and it's just yeah, fun project. It's no commercial project, so I'm not doing consultancy with this stuff. So here, just have a look and learn how to do it. And it would be nice if you just tried with other web components and give me some feedback on this one. There's one thing if you want to try it, for example, how to deal with this one, because if you're working with this one, what you need repositories. If you need repositories, you need security compliance scanning, for example, as well. If you want to use this one and you want to use a gateway, we have this free tier. You can just start at JFrog this one, and then you have NPM, Maven, and all this repositories for Artifactory, and you have X-Ray there as well, so that you can scan this text. I have a dedicated session about the security part. So I have a session, I think it's tomorrow, because today, right after this one, I have a session about how to start practically with DevSecOps. So how to start here. But just as a short overview is the main thing is that you have in all these layers different repositories, and inside these repositories we can start searching if you are able to understand these different repositories. So this one I will show later. And yes, I have an example on YouTube. Since COVID, I'm completely happy that I can do what I've done during the time I was a child. I'm going back to the forest. So and I'm really enjoying it, and I started recording videos in my sessions normally in this environment. So if you want to see more outdoor style stuff, then yeah, you'll see there this URLs from YouTube. I have it in German, I have it in English. And an example, for example, how to harden the stack, this Vardin stack itself, is in this YouTube video. And then you can see how to deal with this one, but I will explain it in another session a little bit better. And checking on the time, what we could do is that we are talking about how to make TDD, or how to test this stuff, because if you are now able to write Java components for this web component, the next question would be how to make something that you can consume inside JUnit 5 if you want to have a full stack test, not only the Java stack. You want to have a full stack test that is going over Selenium to the instance, to the browser, to the software container, and requesting this one. So I will switch now the slides to this TDD one, because we have a few minutes left, and then we can start with Q&A. So far, I have no questions in the chat, so don't be shy. Just ask me if you have something, because we have some time left. It was not prepared, this talk, so we can just use this time as best as possible. So feel free to ask, and we can switch slightly the direction. Otherwise, I will now switch slides. So how to stop my thing here. So I will just start the next one so that I can show you how to map TDD style. So this one is the next one. So one, let me check. Second, and I can start my presentation. Okay, so this one is just pain, because it's just grabbing my so slightly I have it. So this is if you're not preparing, or if you're just getting a new slot. But now I can share this one. So next part would be how to test it. And here we are. So if we want to test now this whole stack, what we should do, what we need to test a web app. To test a web app, we need the web app itself. If we have a client-side, pure client-side one, then I need just a browser. If I have a server-side one, I have the software container. In this case, it's a software container because Vardin is requires a software container. We have this web app, we have this browser that's consuming this stuff, and then you need Selenium and a robot to do something. And on the other side, you need the test definition and the test runtime to make sure that you are able to describe your test. So this is a quite complex thing, because you have a life cycle, you have to deal with different things. So this is not easy. So how to do this one? So there's one thing. What I'm showing here is TestBench. TestBench, it is a commercial one, but it's open source. And what I could have as an idea is that you're looking how this is done and start learning how this mapping, this generic mapping is done. But if you have a license of TestBench, you can immediately start with this or try it with a trial. What we have on Selenium side is a web element. That's the basic, the core thing that you need to connect to a browser and do some stuff. And on the TestBench side, what Vardin has done here is they have extended this web element to typed element, like a button element, a label element, and in this case, it would be your UI5 batch element. So what is a part inside this API to start mapping your own web components on this product called TestBench? TestBench has the same stuff, so they have done what they have done on the server side with core stuff, they have done for the testing stuff as well. So it was just clear to do the same approach, but mapping to a different technology, to Selenium instead of the web components. And so they have this basic class called TestBench element. And you're extending this one, and what you're doing is exactly, instead of add tag, now the annotation is add element, and you are just addressing the name of this element. You don't need this npm install, you don't need this import statement, because you are just requesting a node with the name or with tag on the client side. And then you need just the possibility to set properties in get properties. And here it's just a method from test bench element called set property and get property. That's it. And now you're able to write with test bench test against your own mapped web components. The thing what you should do is you should start thinking about how to manage this application lifecycle. I have a talk about JUnit 5 custom test engines. It's available on YouTube, so check it out, and please subscribe my channel. I really would appreciate it. So there I'm showing how to deal with complex lifecycles. You can do it with extensions in JUnit 5, quite convenient. But if this is not convenient enough, you can do it with a custom test engine. It's so much magic. You can just write it, and then you have to do something like start a servlet container, create your WebDriver extensions, and address the application you want to have. It's fitting nicely in this environment with test containers. Test containers is just a nice project. And then you can do all this full stack tests locally on your machine inside Docker, and it's really fast. So it is really fast compared to some other solutions. But what you have is you have this life cycle to ramp it up and ramp it down the whole stack, and just add it with the JUnit 5 possibilities into annotation, so that you just have to annotate your class with this one, so that you have the life cycle. Now you have the full stack up and running. Have a look at Selenium Lead. It's better than Selenium because it's more lightweight. And what you are able to do now is just, if you have, for example, the host IP address for test containers or whatever, it depends a little bit on your technology, you can just navigate through this URL, loading it, and then you can deal with your components you already mapped, because you have them mapped to Selenium anyway from this web component to your specific web element. So button element, whatever element, your 5-batch element. And then you can do it with a page object or whatever is your design principle you like. But in the end, what you have, you can write now a full JUnit 5 test, and you can set breakpoints, and you can debug it, and you can just refactor it. So this is really convenient. What you reach now is you have now a Java stack. You're defining a class, or within Caribou DSL in Kotlin or whatever, and you can write your JUnit test against it. And you're doing a full stack test. So there's no part missing. This one, yeah, I showed before, this SAP UI5 for Flow. Just feel free. And if you have any recommendations, please come to me and just let me know. Having in mind the complex part here is really how to create this page object, how to deal with this lifecycle, make sure that the context in JUnit 5 is clear. But there are so many documentation about it, and it really depends on your flavor, what you like. Oh, this is, by the way, is a screenshot from my talk. I love my hat. I just don't have it on me because I have this headset. But this is the JUnit 5 custom test engines. I have this one in English and German as well. Feel free. Yeah, sure. You can start grabbing this infrastructure. And this one I will explain later. This one I will explain later because we are running out of time. Don't forget, I'm showing you how to harden the body in seconds. That's it. Oh, I have a mailing list if you want to see what I'm talking. So just register, no save stuff. That's it. So first of all, if you want to reach me out, I'm here for Q&A now. If you want to reach me out, Twitter is very good. And LinkedIn is very good to reach me. Otherwise, I really would recommend if you're having a look at my YouTube channels, because since COVID, I'm actively creating videos and sharing them on YouTube. And that's it. So I'm open for questions now.
So we have one question in the chat. Repco wants to know, is there like a store for web components?
Excuse me, it's there.
Is there like a store for web components?
Yeah, there is webcomponents.org. I think this is official one, or this is one of the biggest one. I don't know if there are any others. but I think have a look at this NPM universe and they will redirect you to the official something like Maven Central thing. And then just have a look there. I think it's webcomponents.org or NPM, some stuff. Search for this one. I don't have it in the full URL in my head, but it's just search for webcomponents.org and then they're listing. I hope I could at least give an idea of an answer, even if it's not. Well, this question was rapid clips. I think we have a lot of people here that know way more about rapid clips than I am, but I assume if you can map Vaadin components to some icon that you can drag and drop, I think with SAP5 UI components, it would be possible. I haven't done it, I never tried it, but I think it's possible because it's the same mechanism and it's the same base technology. So I think it could be, but well, you should ask the people that are creating it. Okay, so I would say thank you very much.